Caledonian Elixir. Welcome to the Caledonian Elixir. This is a podcast that takes a tragic deep dive into the darkest recesses of the human condition. I'm your host Vincent, and today on the Elixir I'm going to do something different. Today I'm starting my weekly current events news show. It's my analysis, opinions on global crises to local issues. This is news told with wit and true grit, a vibe for the human mind. Welcome to the Interzone of information. So, a lot of people would say, I'm not interested in getting the weekly news from an ambiguous, semi-literate former drug addict. However, just stay with me here, and maybe we can navigate through the truth and the bullshit. I want to start with the events in Ukraine and the misinformation propaganda of the mainstream media. So, we are hearing warnings on the news about a possible Russian attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Incidentally, this is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. This story is a lie, just like the story that Russia blew up their own Nord Stream pipeline was a lie, or when they said the attack on the Kremlin with drones was done by Russia. That was a lie. As if President Putin woke up one day and decided to attack his own residence. Or when the Kharkovka dam was recently destroyed, allegedly, by Russia. Another lie. Now, the Zaporizhzhia power plant is in Russian-controlled territory, so any radiation event involving the destruction of a plant would spill into Russian towns and communities, harming, killing Russian citizens. So why are we hearing this story in the media? Well, that long-awaited Ukrainian counteroffensive that we have been hearing so much about, well, it began 6 weeks ago. And it has been a complete disaster. According to Russian military reports and reports undertaken by former CIA analysts, around 20,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed so far in the offensive, with an equal number injured. To add to this, Ukraine has not captured any towns or cities in this offensive, which is a far cry from the Ukrainian great military fist that we have been told so much about, that would punch through the Russian defences and reach the Sea of Azov, severing the Zaporizhzhia land bridge that connects the Russian territories of the Crimea to the Donbass. Well, it's been a disaster for Ukraine and their NATO backers. However, Ukraine and NATO has to sell some kind of victory to the domestic audiences back home in the UK, France, the United States, Canada, Germany. They can feel the heat moving in. They feel trapped and they are crooning for a victory over Russia. And the reality is settling in that the only way they can defeat Russia, possibly, is direct military intervention by NATO in Ukraine. In other words, NATO boots on the ground. But this is a coming apocalypse. It would be a roller coaster ride through hell. And most of the domestic audience knows this. They are opposed to NATO forces in the Ukraine, unless there is a serious event that would require NATO involvement. An event so serious our military would have to get involved. An event like the destruction of a massive nuclear power plant, causing a radiation cloud that would spread across Europe. Now, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is closely linked by themes of death, deception and dominion. When the said Nord Stream pipeline was destroyed by Russia, we knew it was a lie. As Joe Biden even said, the pipeline would not continue if Russia entered Ukraine. Then we have the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Seymour Hersh, who is maybe the most credited journalist alive. He reported on the Vietnam War, the Church Committee findings on CIA mind control projects in the 70s, Abu Ghraib in Iraq and Syria. Hersh reported a source that revealed Nord Stream was destroyed by a joint UK-US operation, and incidentally not long after this report the US State Department reported that they now just suddenly had information that Nord Stream was actually destroyed by a rogue Ukrainian operation, so don't blame the United States and Britain. And it was definitely not Russian sabotage then. So that was nonsense. Russia didn't blow up their own pipeline. Why would they? They could just turn it off. Then there is the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam. Now the Kakhovka Dam was built by Russia. It is in Russian territory and importantly ran fresh running water into the North Crimean Canal, providing millions of Russians in Crimea with fresh drinking water and water for irrigation. So why would Russia destroy the source of water for millions of Russians, making life more difficult for Russians in Crimea? Makes no sense, right? But someone wants to make life more difficult for Russians in the Crimea. Someone wants to expel the Russian population from the Crimea. And that is Ukraine, more specifically the Zelensky regime. So when there is a war, only later do we realise that this barbaric city is the one we will all one day inhabit, if not stopped. So do not believe the lie of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear disaster story when you hear it in the coming days. The next story I want to cover is net zero. I recently received my quarterly local council magazine. This magazine informs the tenants about local initiatives and community meetings, etc. An interesting article of this magazine had to do with net zero and how to correspond with your council in order to understand the benefits of net zero. So for those of you who do not know what net zero is, well, in my opinion, it's a vast political and commercial profit-driven agenda with a peppering of good old totalitarianism. It will reduce us all to the total dependency of addicts. However, the media and the priesthood of scientism sell it as an international initiative to reduce man-made carbon to net zero, as this carbon is causing the earth to warm, thus causing climate change. Now, I think this is a paranoid, visionary, delirious conspiracy. And why do I say that? Well, actual carbon in terms of parts per million is historically low. It's around 400 parts. In the Jurassic era, it was around 1800 parts. In addition, in the last interglacial period, the surface temperature of the Earth was warmer than it is today. Now, this is interesting, as there was no human industry back then to emit carbon. Thus, climate change is a natural phenomenon. This agenda is stamped with a sinister genius that ultimately, I think, wants to get rid of us. Now, why do I say that? Well, look at what we've done so far and what we're doing now. They're expropriating tens of thousands of acres of farmland throughout Europe and North America in order to be rid of the animals, such as cows, that are a leading emitter of methane. Moreover, farmland is used with nitrogen oxide to grow plants as part of the NPK formula. Look, here is the truth. Carbon is good. We are carbon-based life forms. The only way to get to net zero carbon is to be rid of carbon-based life. Yet those psychopathic and scientific priests tease us with the mirage of a utopia. And for your information, a utopia is a Latin word and it means nowhere. So its usage here is fitting. So here we are at the end. But I want you to forget the hustling smiles of politicians or the cold undersea gaze of a scientist and return to the inner truth that resides in us all, that you don't need eyes to see, you need vision. Well, that is part 1 of my weekly news show. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.